Huntington Manuscript 144 has come a long way in its 500-year life. It originated in England at the end of the 15th century and is currently housed in the Huntington Library in San Marino, California. This miscellany includes versions of Chaucer's Melibee's Tale and Monk's Tale, as well as works by Lydgate and Lichfield, but it also contains hidden treasures. Many years after the original compilation of the miscellany, on the back of a blank page toward the end of the book, one 16th century writer added their own special touch, a recipe for a medicine against the plague. Riverside, California. 51 miles east of this manuscript's home, I've studied and transcribed this curious and oft-forgotten page for a graduate course on medieval manuscripts. We've been discussing the importance of manuscripts as material objects rather than just a means to acquire information. What's lost when textbooks and anthologies only publish the important stuff, like the Chaucer, and leave idiosyncrasies like the plague page behind? I'm interested in an experiment. Let's not only include the plague page, but celebrate and highlight it. Let's bring its materiality back to life. Let's make the recipe. Based on this concept, I've built the website 144dragons.omeka.net. The site is named after one of the recipe's most sexy ingredients, a quantity of dragons. Now, as much as I wish that this medicine really called for an undisclosed number of fire-breathing mythical creatures, the truth is much simpler. The recipe calls for a quantity of dragons, the crop or the root, referring to a variety of possible plant species from the croton, dracana, Dimonorops, Calamus rotang, or Pterocarpus genera. Since Roman times, the sap of some of these plants has been used as a bright red pigment, but the ancient Romans, Greeks, and other Mediterranean cultures also believed that the leaves and roots of the plant itself had medical properties. This belief persisted through medieval medicine, alchemy, modern folk healing, and even into modern-day neo-paganism. Which brings us to today, to another kind of dragon. Downtown Riverside. Just a few miles away from the university, and directly across the street from Riverside's historic Mission Inn, sits the 21st century metaphysical store Dragon Marsh, your one-stop shop for any herbs, spices, incenses, essences, flower oils, and other spiritual supplies. I spoke to an employee named Alex about my project. I showed him my transcription and research, and he offered to help me find the nearest approximates to the ingredients on the plague page. Although Alex didn't feel comfortable appearing on camera, he did offer a few words of advice. He was the first to point out that, of course, Dragon Marsh's ingredients aren't prepared or packaged medievally, and that it might not be possible to know the specific species of plants mentioned in the recipe unless we knew more about the date and region of the original writing. Even then, of course, language and medicine change over time. I assured him that my project wasn't an attempt to be wholly authentic, but rather to consider if and how any of these herbal medical beliefs have carried through to the present day, and also how we might make medieval medical studies more interesting to everyday people. Alex recommended a number of books on both subjects, and I left the store with his support and excitement, plus $12 worth of plague page ingredients. Back at home, I prepared my mise en place. Rue? Check. Marigolds? Check. A feather? Alex insisted that heather would make more sense, but my transcription just didn't look like an H. Burnet? Check. Sorrel? Check. And a quantity of dragons, the crop. Alex offered this to me in two forms, which he called crunchy or powdered, but suggested that the larger crunchy pieces would be more in line with the recipe. So I was off. At this point, I'd like to turn the voiceover over to my friend Kathy, who has a much more comprehensive knowledge of medieval and early modern language and pronunciation than I do. Although she was also challenged by some of the unknown variables in the manuscript's history, she used my research to give her best approximation of the recipe preparation, which I will enact on camera now.
Jesus, this is the medicine that the king's grass used every day, the which he then provided for the running sickness that knew rent. And by the grace of God it hath slain this year many persons. He must take a handful of rue, a handful of marigolds, half a handful of feather, a handful of burnet, a handful of sorrel, a quantity of dragonis, the crop or the root. Then take a pottle of running water. First wash them clean, and let them sit easily till it be almost come from a pottle to a quart of liquor. Then tuck a clean cloth around it and drink it, and it be bitter. Put thereto a little sugar or candy, and this may be drunken often. And if it be drunken before any purple appear, by the grace of God there shall be no peril of no death.
So, what have I learned from my experiment? Carolyn Dinshaw, in Getting Medieval, writes that, quote, "The modern is not characterized as simply different from the medieval, but is touched by the medieval, and the medieval is touched by the modern. The absolute opposition cannot hold. The past cannot be used simply to ground the present." End quote. Although Dinshaw's statement is part of a much larger argument that can cause literal throwdowns among medievalists and queer theorists alike, her point is still important. The connection between past and present is of immense value to cultural studies and everyday political life. Will this recipe against the plague really work? Probably not. But taking an interest in a medieval manuscript, not simply for its well-known or canonical texts, but for the eccentric additional sites to explore that are unique to the manuscript's original form, is an important step in an exciting direction. In this ever more digital and technocentric world, let's find new ways to reach out and touch the past, to make it tangible, and in turn, allow it to touch us, and breathe new life into our academic, political, personal, and everyday worlds. For more information about HM 144, visit 144dragons.omeka.net or search for HM Huntington Manuscript 144 on the Huntington Library's website.